In this nugget, you and I get to discuss and demonstrate how to configure time settings, including NTP, to synchronize our time on the NetScaler. We'll also take a look at the critical step of saving our configurations as well as backing them up. Let's begin. I've got a question for you. If a tree fell over in the middle of the woods and no one was around, would we know what time that happened? And the answer is, well, if there was a video camera on that and it had timestamps involved and the time was accurate, the answer is yes, we would know. Well, in our systems, including our NetScaler, we want to have accurate time for lots of reasons. For example, having logs that have accurate date and timestamps so we can correlate those to other events that are happening in the network and with our servers. If we're working with digital certificates, that's also important for validating a certificate. Because if a certificate is only good between, for example, this year and next year, and one of our systems thinks that it's 2 years from now or 2 years in the past, that could result in a failure of a device not accepting a certificate because it thinks the certificate is out of date range. And overall, it's just a good idea to have accurate, correct time on our systems. On the initial configs of a NetScaler, we're given the opportunity to configure a time zone. But if we got that wrong or we want to change it, we can go ahead and do that under System Settings. Then also under System, there's an option for setting up our NTP server. And also I want to share with you the diagnostic section under System because that's where we can go to view the differences, for example, between our saved configuration, that's the one the NetScaler is going to boot to, and what we're currently running. Because I also want to emphasize that we definitely want to periodically save as well as back up our configurations. Here on the NetScaler, we're at the Configuration tab, and with System selected, it's showing us the system information on the System Information tab, including the NetScaler IP address, that's the primary management IP, the current time zone that is set, as well as the system time. It's also got some details regarding the last time the configuration was changed, as well as the last time the configuration was saved. So if we want to set our time zone, if we needed to change or modify it, what we would do is expand the system section. And to expand this, we could go ahead and click on this section and it would expand. And then we'll click on Settings. And then over here on the right, we have the option for changing the time zone. So we select time zone, choose the appropriate time zone. Now also we have the option here of using UTC time zone. And some companies do that because they have multiple locations all over the world and they just want one consistent time, UTC, with no offset for the local time zone. And then as long as the entire company knows that all the logs, all the events are all based on UTC, it could make those easier to sort out as they're comparing the logs from one system to the logs from another. We're also going to want to use the services of a network time protocol server, which uses UDP port 123. And under System, if we select NTP servers, there aren't any by default, but we can add one. We simply click on Add, or we could right-click here and click on Add. Either way will give us the opportunity to add a new NTP server. So let's click on Add. Now all we need is an NTP server. So let's do this. Let's go out to Google, and we'll Google NTP Pool US, and here's the North America pool at www.pool.ntp.org. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this top one and just copy that. Now, in your environment, you very likely already have either your own NTP server that's synchronized to an atomic clock, or you've got an NTP server in your organization that's synchronizing to another trusted NTP server out on the internet. And what you could do is just point to your internal NTP server to get the time from that. In this example, I'm just going out to a public NTP server. In a production environment, we're going to want to take additional steps to make sure we're not going to get spoofed on the time, that no one's going to lie to us about the time. Let's go to a command prompt and just find out what the IP is behind that NTP server. So let's do a ping. We could also use NSLOOKUP and that would also work. And we'll paste that name in and then we'll press enter. And that verifies a couple things. Number one, that server is up, and we also know what the IP address is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Mark and select that and put that in my buffer. And then we'll go back to our NetScaler and we'll simply paste that in. And I'm going to accept the defaults. If we wanted to edit this server, we could right click on it, click on Edit, and if we had multiple NTP servers and we wanted this to be our preferred NTP server, we could click that checkbox. And if we were using authentication, we could also supply a key. And in our lab environment, I'm just going to accept the defaults and click on OK. Now, just because we have an NTP server configured does not mean that we're actively using it and synchronizing to that NTP server. One last step we'd want to do is we'd want to go ahead and right click on this NTP server, and then from the drop down we can select NTP synchronization. And what's really happening with this drop down, it's really just providing us this button, this button, this button, plus the actions, which is NTP sync and NTP parameters, which we'd get from this drop down as well. So there's more than one way to get to the action that you want to perform. In fact, I'm going to do it from this drop down just because we can. Click on it